Welcome to Conversations with HJM. I'm Lisa Harris-Jones.
And I'm Tommy Tompsett.
And we're here today with Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller. Thank you for joining us.
I'm thrilled to be here.
So last year we had Governor Moore, and I got a little emotional because I was excited about the historic election, and I'm even more excited now with the Moore-Miller administration, you being the first woman of color, first immigrant. What has it been like in this new role as Lieutenant Governor of Maryland?
Well, thank you for that question. And I'll tell you what, I'm still emotional about it. I never thought there would be a situation in which somebody that looked like me would be in a role like this. And I have to tell you, it's been extraordinary during this first 8 months of our administration. And the people of Maryland, of course, are very diverse individuals. In fact, Maryland is the most diverse state on the East Coast. And so we have a lot of representation that we need to take into consideration as our administration continues to work.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. The first couple of days of you and the governor working on that second floor, there was a picture in one of the newspapers, and I looked at it, and the diversity of the cabinet and the people that you've brought in has meant a lot to Marylanders, because it looked like Maryland. It looked like the General Assembly. It reflected who lives in Maryland. I mean, what is that also, putting the administration together, like what were you guys thinking? What did you look at?
Well, that's exactly what you said, Lisa, is that we wanted to make sure that leadership, the voices that are there, that have a seat at the table, represents the state of Maryland. So we created the most diverse cabinet ever in Maryland's history, where 50% of our cabinet secretaries are people of color, 50% are women, and 29% are women of color. Now, we didn't do this to just check the boxes. These individuals are highly qualified, and they're already doing an extraordinary job to be able to serve the people of Maryland. They all come with unique experiences, life journeys. And that's what we need, because the more diversity that you bring, the better end product and services that we can deliver to the people.
So you served for 8 years in the House of Delegates, and you bring that unique understanding of the legislative process and how a bill becomes a law, and what's important with, looking at legislation, looking at policy. What are the things that you're focused on as Lieutenant Governor?
First off, we work in partnership together, right, Governor and I. And as you know, during our first session here, it's been one of the most successful of any first-term gubernatorial team. We introduced 10 pieces of legislation. All 10 passed with bipartisan support, so we're thrilled about that. And we worked on a lot of different issues, from making sure that we go toward ending child poverty, which has been the focus of our campaign, to making sure that we can grow the economy of our state, and to create a state that is going to be focused on service. So those are things that we're working together on. But me personally, I'm working on things such as transportation. I'm a civil engineer, and I spent 2 decades being a civil engineer, meeting with communities, and I know how important transportation is, and it touches everyone's lives. Another thing that touches everyone's lives is our mental health and behavioral health. We got to make sure that people are feeling good before they enter the economy. And then in order to get to the jobs, you got to make sure you got a transportation network that takes them there, right? And another area I'm going to be focusing on is STEM education, to be able to bring women and people of color into these fields. Because when you're shut out of this process, you're shut out of a great economic opportunity. Because if you take a look at the last several decades, the greatest amount of GDP growth that we've had in our nation has been a result of 2 different areas: science and technology. In fact, 80% of our growth has been attributed to that. So we need to bring more women and people of color into these fields.
So Governor Moore has called you the consequential Lieutenant Governor. And that's based on the historic nature of your victory that Lisa brought up, but also the oversized role that you're playing in policy. How has this job met the expectations that you had going in? And is there anything that's been outside of your expectations that you experienced in this first year?
Well, I'll tell you what, it has not only met my expectations, but it's far exceeded it. As we touched upon earlier, I started off in the legislature, and the legislature is a wonderful place to work at because that's where policy is created. But on the executive side, you get to implement it. And that's really exciting to me to be able to do that because we've been all over the state. We met, constituents and residents from, Garrett County all the way to the Eastern Shore. And you hear from the individuals exactly what their needs are. And being on the executive side, you can, actually deliver what it is that they're looking for. So it's been really, really extraordinary to be able to be on the executive side.
One of the things you have started on your own initiative is the Council on Interfaith Outreach. Why is that important to the state of Maryland, and what do you plan for that group to do?
The diversity of our faith that strengthens our state. I want to make sure that we can talk together about what we can do collectively to move Maryland forward. And there's so many ways, whether we're doing food drives or we're teaching young kids about taking SATs or helping the elderly. These are all things faith groups can come together and do, and hopefully to also, combat crime and hate crimes. I grew up in an interfaith home. My father was Hindu and my mom Christian, and I'll tell you, I just never noticed any different. I just figured the whole world, works the way our home did. There was never any conflict related to that. It was more a unity of how people of different faiths can come together and live an extraordinary life. And I want to make sure that Marylanders have that same opportunity.
So you're the chair of the Work Zone Safety Work Group. Tell us about that.
Yeah, as you recall, in March of this year, there was a really horrific accident that happened on I-695, where a driver that was speeding in the order of over 100 miles an hour crashed into a work zone site and ended up killing 6 construction workers instantly. I mean, this was horrific. First of all, they were men and women that worked on that site. 2 of them were brothers. Another 2 were father and son. Another one was a mother. Can you imagine? All of them not coming home to their families. Not only that, but their families' lives forever are altered as a result of the loss of their loved ones. So while, Maryland Department of Transportation has been working on work zone safety, this is really going to concentrate on what we can do together. So we brought in experts, engineers, union workers, construction workers, our first responders, police, law enforcement, all of them coming together to talk about what can we do to make these zones safer. So we're looking at it from 2 different angles. One is, what do we do actually at the sites to make it safer? The other is, how do we educate our drivers so they're aware of these work zone safety areas that they need to slow down? Look, there's a lot of drivers on the road these days. They're aggressive driving, there's impaired driving, there's distracted driving. These all lead to these accidents. And so we're going to try to take a look at how can we better educate them as well. So it could be on a regulatory basis, it could be a legislative process. Maybe we introduce laws that strengthen the enforcement.
So we're here at the Maryland Association of Counties summer conference. So I know you have a busy schedule. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience before we let you go?
Yeah, I just want to say that Governor Moore and I are thrilled to be here because it's a great opportunity to meet with all our local elected leaders of 24 jurisdictions that are all coming together right here. And as we all know, all politics is local because these elected leaders are the ones that are closest to the constituents that are able to really build trust and come up with the ideas and how we can best serve the constituents all over the state of Maryland. And as you know, Governor Moore and I ran on a platform to leave no one behind. And to leave no one behind is to be able to listen to every one of these local leaders and to understand what their needs are and work together in collaboration and partnership.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate you stopping past.
Of course.
And thank you for joining us on Conversations with HJM.